female entrepreneur interview series. We apologize for being a few minutes late, well, more, because we were having more technical difficulties. So, for those of you who do not know, From Wallet to Wealth is a brand created to speak to women, to help mentor, educate, guide them, and empower them to leading better lives. And today I will not be doing the interviewing. Whitney Hammond will. This is her call. So you jump on, and I'm just going to check to make sure that we actually are broadcasting.
Okay.
I can see some viewers, so we're good. Yeah.
You can? Okay. I couldn't find any. So I was like, not again.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start off with I am red as a tomato because I got really sunburnt. But this cycle of working really hard and then vacationing will come up in this conversation. I wanted to bring you on to talk about kind of the evolution of Wallet to Wealth as it started and kind of now where I see you going. So for some of you who don't know the story of Wallet to Wealth and where it came from, I know, Mom, you're used to telling this story now, but once upon a time, it used to be scary for you. But just going back to some of like your earlier years, so the theme is from survival to thriving to contribution. And when we are in survival mode, like we can't serve from an empty cup. We're just thinking about ourselves. We're just trying to get through the day. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the earlier years? Like what were some of the family patterns and dynamics that contributed to you feeling powerless?
Yeah, and actually, you're right. It is a very selfish mode, and we don't realize it at the time. So your question takes me back to the beginning of my life and the messages that I heard when I was growing up, and it was a lot of confusion because there was a constant banter back and forth between my parents about money. And so I didn't feel safe. And in hindsight, I don't know why they were having those conversations, because my dad was very successful, and he was very financially responsible. He totally knew what he was doing. But the continual screaming back and forth for, really for a few decades, I just didn't feel safe. And because of that, I carried that on into my teens and my adult years. Is that's all I knew was how to not feel safe. So I attracted more unsafe into my life. And I couldn't tell you that back when I was in my 20s, but now at this stage of the game, being almost 60, I can look back and see that I perpetuated all that I knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a common theme. And I mean, I teach on the mother wound, and like I've had my own, like obviously I'm very privileged, but I've had my own variation of that. That's why I brought in the sunburn and going away for the weekend, because it doesn't feel safe to not work for me. So I go into the patterns of working really hard. So depending on how much you want to share, just your experience with Halton Women's Place, like, can you take us a little bit back to that experience and how Wealth was born?
Sure. So how I actually did end up in Halton Women's Place, which is a women's shelter in Burlington. So how did I end up there? Was truly because I attracted more unsafe situations. So I was in a very bad, dangerous marriage, and I honestly, I mean, you'd think you would know how to get yourself out of those things, but I didn't, and partially because I didn't realize how dangerous, in fact, it really was. For anybody watching, you have to be very careful with these things, because what you see and what's happening is usually a lot worse behind the scenes that you don't realize, because our self-esteem it becomes so low that we feel that we deserve to be treated that way. So I went to Halton Women's Place, and I fled to Halton Women's Place with you and your sister when you were very, very, very young, and sought safety and shelter there, and they were able to do that. And it was when I was in Halton Women's Place that I actually had a moment of clarity, and I realized that it was me that had to change. Okay. So, if we go back to what we first opened up with was selfish thinking, sometimes we get into this victim mode where it's all about us, all about us, all about us, and they. And I had that moment of clarity when I was in Halton Women's Place, that it was me that had to change. And that's really where the seed of Wallet to Wealth was planted. It didn't have that name, but the idea was that I was going to catapult out of there and rebuild my life and teach women that they don't have to end up in these situations. So the seed was planted there, and then it evolved later.
So that was around like age 29-ish, age 30?
No, I think I was around close to 28. Yeah. And it seems like I was so young, like when we talk about it now, but back then, I mean, I was an adult. I had 2 children. Like I had a major responsibility, and ending up in a situation. I mean, thank God that Halton Women's Place is there to be able to help people to get, my self-esteem started, when I was a child, that I was, less than, I was a female. And, back then, 60 years ago, it was a different world. We weren't as valued. And if you go back even beyond that to my mom's age, like it sounds funny when we talk about it now, but I just watched a movie with the judge, the female Supreme Court judge who just passed away a few months ago, and the story of her life and what she had to do. So really, there's been a massive evolution, but it doesn't change how we feel inside of our mind. And it's that poor self-esteem that leads us to really negative situations.
Yeah. It's kind of that typical, like when you hear someone who's being physically beaten by their partner, and then from the outside, you're like, well, why can't you leave? But that person believes that they deserve that. Like they don't see it. I just watched a movie on that last night. I forget the name, but it's a really good movie. So, okay, from that, you're kind of in this like fight or flight mode, like survival around that age. And then you started your company maybe like a few years later. How did you then go from like survival to thriving? Like walk us through that part of the journey.
Yeah. So I was living in a victim's mode, right? But I catapulted out of that. And yes, I did start my company probably about just a couple of years after, because I had to get the education. So I went and did, a lot of study, a lot of degrees. So, and in that, what I decided was that my mission was to help others. I was really good from a young age at finance. I'm top of the class, math, chemistry, science, biology. That's my education. But yet, with a mind like this, I ended up falling into this. So this could happen to anybody. But the solution really in life is about helping other people. And when you help other people, you actually help yourself. So I started the business 25 years ago, helping people to build their wealth. And of course, today I'm at a completely different stage in life where I'm helping people that have actually amassed significant amounts of wealth. So, which leads to the level of contribution.
Yeah. I just remember at a Tony Robbins conference that we went to back in 2013. I can't remember what it was called, but there was like the different level, maybe it's like the spiritual evolution, but I'm pretty sure contribution was right up at the top.
It's the pinnacle of life.
Yeah.
So we're gifted, it's important that we learn to actually give back. And that's one of the probably the biggest thing that Tony Robbins teaches his group is to give.
Yeah. So were you able to give, like, has philanthropy or giving back always been a part of your journey, or was that something that you only felt like you could do once you had your basic needs met? Or
No, actually, with philanthropy, what it is it's a whole new level of thinking. So it wasn't about because there are some of the most wealthiest people won't give a dime away. They won't pay 10 cents more for a package of macaroni if they can get it for 8 cents less at another store. And that's a well-known fact. Contribution is the pinnacle in life. You're playing at a whole different level. Like it's your entire thinking completely changes. So it wasn't about how much money I had in the bank account or how much I was earning. It became more of a I became educated where I realized that I was able to contribute at a whole new level. So my contribution was about helping people rise up financially. And it's amazing how people do struggle. They make lots of money, but they just don't know how to figure out how to make a plan with that, how to make a strategy, and how to build a long-term sustainable life and wealth, amass wealth and legacy for your family. So I think, yes, this is where it started. It started with legacy when I started to realize the legacy that I had built, and then realized that I didn't have to die. That was the thing. Like we all built up all this wealth, and then we die one day and we leave it to, our children and our grandchildren. And so many years ago, I realized that, oh man, I don't have to die. I can start giving this money away. And I actually have a star in the Walk of Fame sidewalk at Sheridan College. That was, I don't know, they put that in more than 10 years ago. And so I had started donating to the theater program. And the reason why I started there was because I was watching the talent and the kids coming from all over Canada, and many of them were gay, and they weren't being supported by their family. So the family just didn't see the importance of theater, and they also were not what's the word? They weren't supporting their lifestyle. And so I got in and, started talking to the actors and seeing what was going on, and the struggling artist, and, the fact that these people, again, were having those, same horrible feelings that I had throughout my life. And I just wanted to support them. And I found through supporting them, what happened was many others followed me and started donating massive amounts of money into that program and into that school in Oakville. So that was the key, that the seed that started to plant, and then it kept growing. Of course, and then being on that level, I start meeting all sorts of other people that are giving away millions of dollars. And, sometimes, because I know you wanted to talk about how others see us, how are we viewed? And, sometimes people might say, oh, well, they just put their name on the wing of a hospital, because they want their name to be shown. It's a whole egotistical thing. Well, let me tell you something, okay? These people that put up these enormous amounts of money, it's a selfless thing. Their name does not sit on that hospital wing for life. It's a maximum of 25 years that you can have that naming right. So if we did not have people stepping up to the plate to give money, there's a lot of social systems that we just wouldn't have. Look at the pandemic we're in right now. We are in a healthcare pandemic. I just traveled to 4 countries where they have way more population than we have, and nothing is shut down. Nothing. Okay. Ontario is shut down. Canada is shut down because we don't have the hospital care. We don't have the money. So it's philanthropists that have stepped up and that have been able to give massive amounts of money to help build our hospital system. If we didn't have that, I'm telling you, it would be a lot worse. So giving is a whole different, it's just a whole different level. And it's a great place to be because, again, remember, you attract what you put out. So I put out in my, in my years of survival, I put out that I was a victim, right? And I'm not a victim now. I'm somebody who can write checks to make differences in this world. I'm somebody who can like flick away the people that cause trouble for other people. So yeah.
There's a few things I want to reflect back on. The first one is you gave birth to an artist. Because I'm an artist. I don't know if Amy's watching this, but I just wrote my article on this topic. The first thing around legacy that I find interesting is because we kind of come from like a family that has a disconnect. Like we don't know our relatives in the Ukraine. We don't have that legacy. So
we don't because they're all dead. They were massacred. Yeah.
Right.
So not that we disconnected from them, but when my dad and my Bob and Dito came to Canada, they lost their home and all of their belongings, and any relative that was connected to them. That was it, done.
Yeah. So that's an interesting link. And then the other one, because I remember giving $100 to the Sheridan, like that was 10 years ago. I was in university and I was giving $100.
It was an award. Yeah.
I think it was the Whitney Hammond Breakthrough Award.
Yeah.
What it was called. But I just had someone like, I don't know if they do this in Canada, but here in France, I don't know, someone came knocking at the door and they were collecting money for the homeless. And I used to work in a homeless shelter like all throughout high school for my, what do you call it? It was your 40 hours of community service. Right. And like, I'm at a point now where normally I would have not have given back. I would have just like shut the door on their face. But I also felt like so moved by it. And I have such a weak spot for the homeless. So I just paid like $100 and I bought one of their printed painting things. But it just goes to show that that's like that giving back has been like transferred through the family. I know that my sister has given to, I forget the cause now.
Animals.
But there's a girls thing in Toronto. I forget the name of it now.
Oh, yes. I forget too. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, I'll type it in the comments later. What was the third thing I wanted to touch on? I mean, I think that there's a lot of judgment around wealthy people and how they spend their money. And can you like help break the stigma that wealthy people are bad or selfish? Like, yeah.
Okay. So there's two in the monetary system. There are, so not spiritual health and all of that. Right now, you're asking me a question about money. So in the monetary system, there are two types of wealthy people. There's wealthy people who were born into that situation, living, with family trusts and wealth businesses and stuff like that. And then there are those who have made their own wealth, and those are actually the most coolest people. And the reason why is because they're entrepreneurs and they're creative and they're driven and they're passionate and they're powerful and they're relentless. And those are the people that I've always hung around with. They're the trailblazers. They're the ones that don't follow the rules. They're the ones that break through. So the personality of an entrepreneur is not a civil, kind, kumbaya. They're like really driven, got to do stuff. So they could come across as being, a little bit pushy, ADD, stuff like that. But they're a heck of a lot of fun. For those who sit on the sidelines and look at others and say, oh, how did they this? How did they that? They were this, they were that. Certain judgments. The thing is that behind, and this is why I love interviewing the Entrepreneur Female series, is that because behind every successful person, there's a story. And it's usually a cool story and it's a hard luck story. So for people that are watching and thinking that, oh, they got it like really easy in life, they've got all of this stuff. It's not easy. It's a heck of a lot of work. And the biggest thing is it's management. You have to manage what you own. Like you just don't buy stuff. And well, really, we invest, right? We invest in all sorts of different things, but you have to manage it. So no, rich people don't have their heads up their ass. They don't suffer fools lightly. That's pretty much what it is. So if you're if you're they're demanding, they want results. Yeah, but they're also leaders. They're leaders. People follow them. If we don't have leaders, we don't have people to follow. And what I'd like to see is more women stepping up to the plate. I know that as a female, we're born with the giving, the healing, the helping gene. So we're the caregivers of the family. We're the caregivers when our parents get sick. And so we're so focused in that area that sometimes we don't look at the creativity of what we can build. And female entrepreneurism is the fastest growing movement in the United States, and women are actually developing significant amounts of wealth in the United States. In North America, more so in the United States. And it's important to, for women to step up to the plate and start talking about what they're doing and how they did it. And lots of them have already raised their family, so they're beyond the age of 50, and they've got amazing talents and creativity. And it's time for them to start stepping up to the plate and to start that social contribution of what it is that drives them. So, that's individual. I mean, I told you how I started with sharing college, right? Because because of people felt that they were the underdog, and I don't like that, right? I see that, and I want to bring people up. The same thing as helping Health and Women's Place. I mean, I've been a donor I've lost track, probably 15 years, and a significant donor, not $50 a month kind of deal thing, where I'm making differences that I know that I'm part of keeping that building an organization going. Where I want to go with Wallet to Wealth is I want to be their number one contributor. I want to get beyond their gala, their fabulous gala, by the way, that they have every February. It's fabulous, where they raise the most amount of money for the year. I would like to surpass that. And why? Because this is not ending. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's 2021 and we say, oh, children aren't being sexually abused anymore. Women aren't being beaten. Women aren't being mentally, physically abused, so on. Yes, they are. It's unbelievable if you actually look at the stats, and we display those stats, and it's still an ever growing crisis and situation. And what happens is when children grow up and they witness, their mother being spoken down to, or she's less than, or her voice doesn't count, whatever it is, to actually being, hit and abused, and so on and so forth. And the verbal part is abuse too. What happens is our children, they grow up and they see that as the norm, just like I had seen it as the norm, and I perpetuate it. I go out and I find myself a partner who's going to treat me as poorly as what I watched when I was growing up. And it's not about finger pointing. It's about the fact that, my dad didn't know any better. His dad didn't know any better. And lots of people don't know any better. And females can abuse husbands too. So it's both ways, right? But when we're not educated and we don't know better, then these are the things that happen. And the children grow up, and then the women will call into their lives the same thing that happened, or they'll themselves a husband, and they'll male bash their husband, they'll male bash with their friends. It just becomes this vicious cycle, and it's going nowhere. It's not productive. It doesn't create good families. And what it does is it just breeds a bad community. And you know what? If you want your community to be better, then it's about stepping up to the plate and helping the community. And it doesn't have to be a check. Some people like to contribute with their time. There's people like me that are super busy, and I can bring an army of people so that we can make a difference between our time contribution and our financial contribution.
Yeah, amazing. I think that the global consciousness is really raising, and it's interesting to hear your perspective, or even when I hear Grandma speaking, because like I don't have that experience. Like all of the women I know in my age range, they're all like working, they're really strong business owners, like they have really strong leadership. So like I don't have that same perspective. However, when I work with clients that are older, like in their 40s or 50s or even 60s, like they didn't know they had the right to earn money for their gifts. Like, and I have to work so hard with them through that but for like my generation, it's like, we all have to work. We all get to work. It's an opportunity. And
it's true, but you are in the millennial generation. There's another situation that's brewing, and that's that the baby birth rate is down significantly. And to keep our world populated, I think we need to have like 2.2 babies. So because there's now choice of working, a lot of women are choosing not to have families. So again, if we go back to science and nature, we're supposed to repopulate our world. So every time we solve one problem, and I talk about this all the time, when we solve a problem, we create another problem. It's the same in business. I mean, I've been a business owner for 35 years, 25 in this business. And every time we solve a problem, we create another problem. And you know, that's what we do. You're always solving problems. So it is true. And from what I see, is much more removed, you know, from what my mom saw and what my grandmother saw. The other thing that's changed in your generation is the chemistry between male and female, and that's another crisis in its own. Because if you don't have the chemistry, the differences between male and female, that also creates another problem. So, and these problems, you know, your generation is still young, but as you become older, you'll be able to see, oh, okay, you know, there are some things here. Yeah.
I have a client who is an intimacy coach, and I had this conversation with her. I officially earn more than my partner now when we first started dating, and that has changed the dynamics between us. I'll tell you more about it later, but for the viewers watching.
Oh.
So
interesting. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about, just, I don't know if you were going to ask me a question about this, but the one thing about travel and stepping out of ourselves. So I know that we have been locked up here in Canada for 14 months. So it has been difficult for us to, you know, get that mental break. One of the you know, claims to my success has been, and I had to learn how to do this. Okay. It didn't come easily. And I actually came through Dan Sullivan coaching, was to work on my free days, my focus days, and my buffer days, sorry. And so the more free days we take, the more revenue we actually earn. I've proved it does work. And what it is that somebody with a personality like me, and there's many, I mean, it's just a typical entrepreneur personality, is that we have the ability to work 365 days a year. You know, if we could 24 hours a day, we'd do it. And at some point in time, you know, I hate the word burnout because I don't feel like I'm ever going to burn out. But what happens is your mind starts to burn out, and you're not as good. You're not as razor sharp. And so stepping out, stepping away, deplugging, turning off the laptop, turning off everything, and going. So for me, I don't know how long I've done it, for more than 10 years, probably 12, is that I would work 3 weeks, get in a plane, go away, fly somewhere and come back. And so when I come back, I'm rejuvenated. So, and I didn't realize till I think I left mid-May, I flew my plane south and was able to travel to 4 different countries. And I didn't realize that when I was away, that I was that affected by COVID and the lockdown. So pretty much what I was doing for COVID and the lockdown was that I was living within the rules, stay home, no, social distancing, so I did all of that. Don't see your family, don't. And so off I went. And the first family that I saw was your sister, Chanel. And I was thinking like, oh my God, I shouldn't be doing this. What if I get a positive COVID test? Because I have to put the COVID tests into the different countries that I'm traveling to. I have to have a negative, so I had all that stuff. And then, coming back, so I mean, I'm in a city with 17 million people, all like poverty, like you can't even imagine. They're not vaccinated whatsoever. And did I feel safe? I felt amazingly safe. These people were unbelievable. I was there on a Sunday in Cartagena, Colombia. And like I said, there's 17 million people in that city. And the sound that was coming from the city was unbelievable. They were just singing and loving and praising. Many of them, probably most of them, are Catholic, and they were just loving their God. And Britt, it was echoing throughout the entire city. Like, remember when we were in Peru and all the echoing of the firecrackers? This was the pouring out of love in a city that has no money, has no, no social system. They have nothing in their life. And this apparent virus that's ripping through and killing the world. Well, I can tell you, there was no one dying on the streets there. There was nothing but love. And this, I wish I could play you a tape of it. It was unbelievable. Same as when I went to Galapagos, standing in these islands that are, there's no habitation in these islands except for animals, and being in the sound of nature, of these birds and their calls and their mating, and it just brought me back to the basics in life, in how nature is perfect, and how things will grow and evolve and heal, and it just amazing. And then now I come back and I get to work with a new perspective.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting. I have a meeting at the top of the hour, but I wanted to just because It's Wealth has evolved so much over the past 2 years, and we're hoping, if I can ever get back to Canada one day, to redo a brand video to talk about these 3 pillars of going from survival to thriving to contribution, because I think that's ultimately probably the deeper mission around Wallet to Wealth is helping women through those different phases, wherever they are, get to the next level. So thanks for sharing your story.
Absolutely. And thanks, Britt, for kicking me to do it. And next Monday, the Wallet to Wealth Entrepreneur Series runs Monday mornings at 10 o'clock. So we will be back live Monday at 10 o'clock, back on a roll, and collecting new speakers, or new people to interview.
We're looking for new Monday speakers, but also main stage speakers for the November 11th gala.
Yeah, the gala. Yes. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we are being particular about our picks, because we're going to lower the amount of speakers. Okay. Well, thanks, Britt, and everybody have a great day.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.